business and ain't nothing for the poor. The world at war, forever, evermore. Good battle is good business and ain't nothing for the poor. The world at war, forever, evermore. Good battle is good business and ain't nothing for the poor. The world at war, forever, evermore. What you fighting for? Or what you fighting for?
Generic expressions such as there are drugs everywhere, everyone is taking drugs, are just simply not true. Here are the hard facts. Illicit drug use is being contained to less than 5% of the world adult population, as opposed to 5 or 6 times this proportion for people addicted to tobacco and alcohol. There are no more than 25 million problem drug users. That's less than 0.5% of the world population. There are more people affected by AIDS. Also, deaths due to drugs are limited to perhaps 200,000 a year, namely 1/10 of those killed by alcohol, and less than 1/20 of those killed by tobacco. Worldwide, next point, drug cultivation has been slashed, with the obvious exception of Afghanistan, where the issue is insurgency more than narcotics. Adherence to the international drug control regime is practically universal, with the principle of shared responsibility unanimously accepted. Finally, the regulatory system of production, distribution, and use of drugs for medical purposes also function well. We should be proud of these achievements and advertise them without inhibition, as we have done in the 2008 annual reports of the activities of our office that is out today. Few United Nations conventions have delivered similarly impressive results. I do not go as far as claiming that these outcomes, especially the ones that occurred in the past 10 years, are the results of the UN gas process. Certainly there is a strong statistical and chronological correlation. Whether this is a coincidence or a cause-effect relations, as a social scientist, I cannot tell. But whatever the cause, the result is what counts. And evidence shows that for all drugs, there are signs of market stability. Last year, I called this outcome containment of the world drug problem. It still applies.
The idea that the world drug problem is being contained is a very simplistic idea and a very questionable idea. We have some sympathy with the idea that there are signs of stabilization of overall drug markets, but you can't jump from that to say that means that our system is working. He has not been seriously challenged on that in this event so far, but it clearly is not a statement that is clearly true. I think it's worth examining the extent to which the containment has been possible, but as we know with Mr. Costa, he says some very broad things in very certain terms, but a lot of what he's been saying it needs close examination.
I think that Mr. Costa is a very good diplomat and intelligent politician. I'm sure that, in fact, I've read his reports, so I know that by carefully manipulating the data, it can certainly appear that there has been a great deal of progress between 1998 and 2008. I have to disagree that it's all positive. In fact, in many respects, things are much worse than they were then. The notion that substance abuse or substance use even has been contained or controlled depends upon a belief that somehow or other we would have descended into Sodom and Gomorrah by now if it weren't for the UN and ONDCP's efforts. And I frankly think that that's absurd. What we have instead is opium production that's at much higher levels than it's ever been. We have cocaine production in South America, at least in the past 5 years, that has gone beyond where it had been, in spite of some of the best efforts of the United States and the Colombian government. Marijuana is widely available and cultivated everywhere. And we also have methamphetamine and ice, and in the United States, where 5 years ago, people had never heard of smokable methamphetamine or ice. Now it's appearing everywhere, in places like the Midwest, in places, the rural and the city. This is not progress. This is not containing any kind of a problem.
I also find somewhat surprising a statement that we've contained the drug problem. If one looks at the production of cocaine, if one looks at production of opium, it seems to me that we're far from containing a drug problem. So I would have to go and look at the data based on which he came to that conclusion, because if one looks at production of heroin in Afghanistan, there's nothing there that shows containment. There is a lot there that shows growth of a problem and growth of production, which obviously goes somewhere, which obviously gets used by people throughout the world.
I think there has to be more honesty about the fact that, of course, the global market has not been reduced, let alone eliminated. For someone in Costa's position, it's difficult to call it a complete failure. He has to represent nation states who have made the commitments in '98. So he also keeps defending the whole treaty system.
I think it's probably a little unrealistic to suggest that the drug problem has been contained. And if you take a broader view of what the, quote, drug problem is, then I think we have to look at some of the health problems that have been associated with unsafe use of drugs, and we have to look at the human rights abuses that have happened as part of the response to the so-called drug problem. And in that respect, I don't think we can say that the response globally has been a success, because we see terrible health problems associated with drug use still, a lack of action to address those health problems, and we see terrible human rights abuses happening, and a lack of action to take those seriously. And in fact, a real commitment on the part of many states and some UN bodies to promote policies that actually lead to very foreseeable public health problems and to human rights abuses. So to qualify it as a success, I think, is perhaps a little inaccurate.
One thing we can learn from this 10 years is that it is not easy to reduce the extent of the market. The world will have to find a way to live with a drugs market. We have to really forget about the idea of a drugs-free world. So we have to design policies taking into account a coexistence with the drugs market, and to do it in such a way that harm to users and society is reduced to the minimum, and that every attempt to control the market does not produce more damage than it can do good. So that's the human rights side and harm reduction principles.
The world at war, forever, evermore. Good battle is good business and nothing for the poor. The world at war, forever, evermore. Good